How? Okay, let me ask you this: do you prefer Miles Morales or Peter Parker?
No, I don't want to do that. Hey, we're seeing Spider-Man into the Spiderverse today.
We're seeing a new Spider-Man movie.
A movie I've heard about for the last fucking 8 months.
Oh my god! And I'm so
excited.
I'm also very excited. I love Spider-Man. I have since I was a little kid.
Yes.
But I don't think that I've been as pumped for a Spider-Man movie probably since 2007 when Spider-Man 3 was coming out.
Oh.
And then that was what it was. So I'm really, really hoping that this is my new fix.
My one thing about this movie is that I feel like I'm too excited for this movie and that I might be disappointed just on merits that it'll never live up to anything that I want it to be. And that Sony has proven that they don't really know how to do things related to Spider-Man.
I never saw Spider-Man 3 or The Amazing Spider-Man 1 or 2. But I don't think Spider-Man is as important to me as it is to you guys. But I am excited to see it only because you want to support what your significant other likes, and mine really likes Spider-Man, so...
We actually already talked about what we expect out of this movie a long time ago. You can
watch it on by clicking on that eye up there. Anyway, we're gonna go see it, because if I gush any more about it, we'll have like 6 Spider-Man videos here. Holy shit.
I'm just gonna take a nap back here while you guys gush over this movie.
We just saw
Spider-Man into
the Spiderverse.
I really loved this movie. I guess to start off, the movie looks amazing. I could stare at it for hours, and I guess I did. I guess when mainstream animation becomes everything looking exactly the same, it's really refreshing to see something that's different and works really, really well. That's not why the movie is great, but that certainly helps it.
I will agree that the movie looked really, really cool. The animation was really cool. You could see that there were a lot of layers to what they did, and there were a lot of things that I'm sure people can and will eventually pick apart. Overall, I enjoyed it. I obviously didn't enjoy it as much as these two did because it's just not really my thing. But I did enjoy it from an entertainment standpoint, which is a lot of the times when I go in just trying to be entertained. I had my own issues with it, but in an overall, I did enjoy it.
I fucking love this movie. It could easily be my favorite movie that I've seen this year, but I need to think about that a little more. I could go on and on about how great it was, how many different Spider-Man references there are in here, how fantastic it looked, and how great everybody is in the movie itself, and how many original ideas there are. The thing that really brings it home for me is that this is a movie that really understands who the character is. But the spirit of Spider-Man is who the character is supposed to be and who both Peter and Miles are independently of each other and together. That's something that's really missing from a lot of Spider-Man movies that come out. Amazing Spider-Man didn't really have that at all, and I thought that Spider-Man Homecoming had just as many issues in exactly the same way. I have a point, I'm not just shitting on Homecoming.
Okay.
When people ask me what my issue with that movie is, I always say, well, it's the world around him. I think that it was changed for little to no reason. It's not different for the sake of the story or conveying who Spider-Man is as a person. It's different for the sake of saying, oh, this is different. This I would point to and say, we made a lot of changes, but everything had a function. You could tell that the things they were changing because they understood what the real thing is, what it brings to the table. And then they took that and put it in its own new package, and I really appreciated that. I've always said the thing that you need to do for a good Spider-Man story is have a lot of great side characters who bring a lot to the table. There are some really, really great moments with a lot of classic Spider-Man characters in here and a lot of new Spider-Man characters that maybe people don't know as much. And I think that that's really, really great. And yeah, I thought this was really something special, and I really, really loved it. What did you guys think of Miles?
I think it took a really, really, really long time for him to come into his own. I enjoyed almost his exposition a little bit more than I did as him being Spider-Man. Like, I liked his interaction with his uncle and the graffiti and you know, him being at school and, you know, that sort of thing. It just took a long time to get to the end game, I guess. That's what I'm trying to say.
I think what really worked about Miles was that right off the bat, not only did you like him as a person because they took the time to show you, oh, this is what he's going through, this is what's up. They made you like the things that were going on around Miles as well, and they made you aware of what Miles' circumstance was. They made him a very sympathetic character. And I think that that's really the trick to any Spider-Man story. Is you have to care about Peter or Miles more than you care about Spider-Man, because that's what makes the character work. That's that the conflicts take place as Peter Parker or as Miles Morales, not as Spider-Man.
I think the thing that I enjoyed most about this movie is that, like, even when there was heavy conflict happening, it never felt dark. It never felt really heavy. It never felt really, like, depressing. But, like, I liked this movie because I felt like it was light when it should have been, and, you know, sentimental and emotional at other times, but you could still, like, get through it without being upset or being depressed. I appreciated that.
And when it needed to make you feel things, you really, really felt them. At one point, this movie gave me a huge gut punch. This is really something for an animated cartoon, but the next second, you're having fun. If you're Spider-Man, your life is perpetual shit. But it's the attitude and but I still get to be Spider-Man that makes him the character that he is. An optimistic outlook, but everything around you is kind of falling apart, which is the most human thing about the story.
Sometimes I feel like to properly and really talk about something, I need more time than Ride Home Reviews gives me, especially when I really like it.
Well, we don't have that luxury, Jeremy.
I know we don't.
Together.
I know we don't.
I got lots of Deadpool vibes from this movie. But I definitely think that whoever made this movie was like, Deadpool's onto something. Let's go with that.
Right.
But make it for kids. This movie.
But I think that that's nice because they're right.
Oh, I agree.
You know, Deadpool is on to...
I'm not saying that as a bad thing at all. I'm actually saying it as a good thing. I'm glad that they decided that that was what they wanted to do.
Right. And a good part of that is that this is Phil Lord and Chris Miller. If you've seen especially Lego Batman, you see a lot of similarities with that, but it's still their like fast-paced humor and their awareness of, oh, this is what people like.
They just seem like they understand the thing that they're
trying to do. Yeah,
they understand the thing that they're working with.
While I think they definitely understand what they're doing, I think that they're totally incapable of doing anything unless they can be meta about it and say, hey, remember this thing about this? But that being said, that's a style thing and that works for them. I also think that it works that they pulled from Deadpool because Deadpool pulled from Spider-Man. And I thought that that was great. I especially got those vibes from Jake Johnson's Peter.
Like, even when they were just, like, eating the burgers together, he goes, you have money, right? I'm not very liquid right now. Like, I heard that in my head as, like, Deadpool saying that. I like that, even though he was a different Spider-Man from a different dimension, that Aunt May still knew who he was and still treated him as if he was the Peter she knew all along.
Right.
I found that very interesting. I also like how badass they made Aunt May.
Nicolas Cage is fucking noir Spider-Man.
Holy shit.
Was the funniest thing in this whole movie, I thought. Just a lot of it because it was Nicolas Cage, and a lot of it because the noir genre is so ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
I did also really like how each Spider-Man had their own story. They got time to tell their own story, and it wasn't just like, oh, here are all these new characters that I now have to remember who they all are and why they're here.
And the other thing that really worked for me, because we had much debate over this in the trailer discussion, his relationship with his dad, I thought really hit me in a nice spot, and
I thought it worked really well. I thought, I guess it could be a bit cliche at points, but you know, they're cliches for a reason, and I thought it worked really well.
Oliver is quite the sucker for dad stuff.
Alright, negatives. Penny Parker, or anime Spider-Man.
Oh.
I really didn't think that she needed to be in this movie at all, and maybe part of that is because I'm not familiar with that source material in the slightest. But I don't think that she did anything. They gave her the least backstory on anything, and I thought she was just kind of like an extra thing that didn't even look really that cool.
Now, I would say that Spider-Ham got less backstory.
Oh, maybe it's just because I know Spider-Ham, but yeah, I guess he didn't have any other than I got bit by a pig. But I think the problem is with both of them, and Noir Spider-Man to an extent, is just that
Right.
Noir Spider-Man succeeded in making me laugh.
They introduce Gwen and Peter as characters, and then they
Right.
introduce, and then they go over their backstories, and they introduce Noir Spider-Man and Penny and Spider-Ham
All at the same time.
At the same time, and as they do it together, it's a joke on the whole explaining the backstory thing. So it's like immediately these characters just here to be jokes and aren't relevant to the story. I didn't dislike Penny Parker. I agree that she didn't like really have a point other than I guess she made the goober, as they called it.
Normally when you have a superhero movie, your villain to hero ratio is kind of 1-to-1. Obviously, because this movie we had a bunch of Spider-Men, we ended up having a bunch of villains. It was hard at times, in my opinion, because I do not read the comics, to keep track of who was supposed to be the main villain of this movie. Because there was Doc Ock, then there was Kingpin, then there was Prowler, then there was that weird zombie lurch-looking guy that was working for Kingpin. It just felt to me like it was a little scattered, you know, in terms of who is the actual villain of this movie. You have all these Spider-Men, and you have like 3 villains, and all these Spider-Men are not able to beat these 3 villains like during the course of the movie. But I just felt like, especially when they had the big fight in Aunt May's house, but you have like 6 Spider-Men and like 3 villains, and we're losing. Long story short, I felt like the Spider gang, I don't know what to call them, should have been more powerful.
I think that there were too many villains, and the only reason that I know that Kingpin is the main one was because you hear Kingpin, and if you have any background knowledge, you know, oh, okay, main villain of this story, most important villain, other than Doc Ock. And I think what they tried to do was to pick villains that you know from outside, but if you don't know those villains, it doesn't work. You know what I mean? Even like having scorpions in the movie for no reason at all.
Oh, right. There was
Right,
another
yeah.
another villain that I didn't even mention.
Or you could have just made Prowler a bigger threat, and I thought that would have been more
Right, 'cause
effective.
He was essentially only in
A
2
couple
scenes
scenes.
where you even know who he is.
Yeah.
Especially since he's the only villain really tied to, I mean, Kingpin and everybody else is tied to Peter, right? Because
Yeah.
of the relationship that we know outside that he has with them from other universes. However, Prowler is the only villain that is connected to Miles in the slightest, and therefore should have been played up as the main villain of the movie.
I think I'm going to give this movie an A. I really liked it. I'm definitely going to see it again, and that's a really rare thing for me to walk out of a theater and want to see a movie again.
I'll give it a solid B.
I'm gonna give it an A+. I really, really, really love this movie. This is the best thing, in my opinion, to happen in a Spider-Man movie since Spider-Man 2. And it's definitely one of my favorite movies of the year, just overall. Fucking Spider-Man.